Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today I want to talk about captains. I want to go over all three of the captains in this game and give you a quick description of what they do, what they're good at, some weaknesses, and just give you an overall description of the three available captains. So the easiest way to get to that is actually by hitting collect and paint from the main menu. When you have this whole list of every unit in the game, it can be a little bit confusing. You can sort up here and go through cultures up here as well, and most likely some additional filters and eventually an unknown button. But if you just hit rosters and hit new roster, this will be when you make a list. I'll have some follow-up videos coming up soon about making certain lists and show some gameplay with the list, or I should be calling them rosters. But for this video, I just want to go over the three different captains. So your roster will contain 10 units, but in the middle, it'll contain a captain. So we're calling these units on the outside crew, and then a captain. So there are three captains available in Moonbreaker right now. They'll be available for the first season, and they said they plan to release new captains every 4 seasons or so. There'll be a new captain, a new culture, and around 25 additional new units, which is a ton of new units. These are the three that are available currently. So I'll go over them really quickly. Here we have Astros. So if you click on the unit here and then just hit the magnifying glass, you can get a full detailed description of the unit and what they actually do. So if you don't know how to play Moonbreaker, there's a video from about a week ago on this channel that'll tell you all the basics you need to actually play the game. But here, obviously, if you highlight over captain, it'll tell you the main scenario of the game, which is kill the enemy captain and you win the game. So all three of those will have that. She is airborne, which means she can move through obstacles. Each map will have certain obstacles, just either woods or buildings crashed or something like that, and they will block line of sight, or if you shoot through them, reduce your accuracy. But airborne allows you to move through those units. Her passive is Inspire. So she reinforces anytime she destroys another crew. So when she destroys an enemy crew, which is a non-captain unit, she will reinforce, which is essentially drawing a card, right? Reinforcing will be taking a unit, which will be a crew, from your reserve and move it to the bridge, and the bridge is essentially your hand in this game. So that adds a way to get additional card draw other than paying to reinforce all the time, which will cost you 3 cinder each turn if you want to do that. This is another option to do that. So right there, she kind of lends the hand to, okay, she's going to be a little bit unit based. Maybe want to focus more on the units you're putting into your deck rather than this character being your main attacker or main source of damage. And that is really seen here at the bottom with her range stat. So the blue again is range. She attacks for only 1 damage and she has 20 health. So 1 damage is a pretty weak attack, especially for a captain. So she is not the strongest attacker, but if she does get to kill an enemy unit, she will then be able to reinforce and get an extra card in hand, which is great. That playstyle goes a little bit even further when you look into her actual ability. So for 1 cinder, she can boost morale, which is permanently reduce the cost of a random crew in bridge by 2. So again, bridge being your hand, you can, by spending 1, reduce the cost of a unit in your bridge by 2. So it's a net gain of 1 additional cinder. And if you have only 1 unit in hand, you'll definitely hit that one. If not, you'll hit a random one. So every single turn, you can spend 1 cinder to essentially save a cinder eventually, which is pretty great, especially if you put in some high-cost units into this deck of yours, into your 10 roster slots. You can really get some cheap units out that way, which is huge. Her other ability, which is really one of her main things, is Into the Breach, which is remove stunned from a unit. It costs 2 cinder. So that essentially allows you to remove the summoning sickness of a unit. So when you play a unit, you can't typically act with them right away, but you could spend 2 to remove that stunned and then instantaneously act with that unit. Massive ability here. That's probably her main focus. So you see all 3 of her abilities, I guess besides airborne being a keyword that she has, have to do with increasing your hand size, reducing the cost of your hand size, and supporting the units you play. So she is very clearly a support-based captain. If you are a really big fan of the units in this game, and you have a couple that you want to try to maximize, she is definitely your best bet as far as captains go. She will help your units reach their max potential every time. Going down the line, we have Extelior, and he's actually the only melee champion out of the 3. As you see at the bottom, he has a 2 in yellow, which is 2 melee damage and 20 health. They all have 20 health. He is a captain, which of course, if he dies, the opponent wins the game, and they do have certain cultures that they're from. So he's from Methodori. I didn't go over that on the last captain, but they each will have a culture that they're from. His passive ability is called Rally. It is a random ally within range gains Shield of Hope when a rival is destroyed. And if you look at Shield of Hope below, it's one of his abilities. It costs 1 Cinder. It says reduce the next damage to unit by 1. So essentially, you can spend 1 Cinder to put a protective shield on himself or another unit and protect that unit from 1 incoming damage the next time they take damage. You get this extra Shield of Hope every time a random or anytime a rival is destroyed. A rival being any enemy crew member. So anytime they are destroyed, you will get a shield on a random ally within the range of your captain, Extelior. So he is a little bit supporty in that sense because he is going to want to get up close, distribute some shields to help his units survive, and get in close to then finish the fight. And if you look at Sword of Justice, you see clearly he is all about getting up close. So he is a melee champion, so his range is, of course, touching. But Sword of Justice has a little bit of a range, and you'll see that in-game. It has a tiny bit of a range, and it will cost 2, but it'll deal 3 damage to all units within inside that range. So he does like a whirlwind attack and will hit everybody within a certain range. So this captain is very in your face. If you want your captain to be the leader of your army in leading the charge, leading into the front line, Extelior is definitely the way to go here. You may want to take some units that will offer a little bit more support than you would in Astra and an Astra list, because these units are going to actually be used to support this character. So either units that will help him move faster, shield him more, etc. So you just kind of want to make sure you can protect this guy, keep him alive, and be aggressive with him the whole time. And again, I'll go into some other videos soon breaking down actual gameplay with these champions as well, and that'll show you kind of exactly what I'm talking about and what list you want to go with. The last is Zack's Jacar, and Zack's Jacar is another ranged captain. He has a range damage of 2 and 20 health, so he can do some decent damage from afar. And he is the Smuggler culture. He's actually, his lore is really funny. Again, these all have lore tabs where you can read them here. But he's actually dead, but it's like he is... his AI, I guess, is living on inside of this. I forget exactly what it is, but essentially a hologram of this. Of himself, which is pretty hilarious. They go into all these lore tabs here, and they're also putting out audio books on this that are going to be free. So stay tuned for more of that. I'll be covering those for sure. He has a back off ability, which is he pushes target when he hits. So essentially, he hits an enemy unit and he pushes them directly away from himself. So this helps keep enemy units at bay. Can push them away from himself, keeping himself safe, because if they get in close, especially if they're melee units, he'll start taking some serious damage. You'll notice as you go that he actually has a lot of pushing type of gameplay. And not obviously just the 2 abilities that he does, but his purpose is really to manipulate the battlefield. And you can see that when you get down to Sleeper Mind. It's a 1 Cinder ability that creates a mine that takes 1 turn to arm. So essentially you put out a little bomb on the battlefield, and it's not armed yet. As soon as you begin your next turn, it is officially armed, and if someone touches it, they'll take damage, or if multiple people touch it, they will take damage. So if they walk into it, which obviously shouldn't happen because they can control where they're walking, but if you push the Sleeper Mine into them, if you push a unit into a Sleeper Mine, like with back off, if you drag the Sleeper Mine to an enemy unit with a certain ability, there's a lot of different ways that could happen, and especially with ship assists that are pulling units together or pushing units apart, a lot of ways to make sure people are getting hit with the Sleeper Mine, and that'll deal some additional damage. And it costs 1. It's also just really good for blocking paths. You can just put a mine right in the way of somebody walking forward, which is pretty huge. But Gravity Disc is his main gameplay mechanic. It's a 2 Cinder cost ability, and it moves units in an area together, so it's kind of like a vortex. It brings them all together. So what you can do is either push enemies, and again, this is within a range, but you can push a bunch of enemies together away from him. You can pull them all close to your melee units. You can pull your own melee units closer to the enemy. You could pull everybody into a Sleeper Mind. It's really an endless strategy here. There's so many options with Gravity Disc that I highly advise you to just explore multiple different list options with Zack's. One that seems to be pretty popular is just using some heavy melee units and slower units that kind of need to get up close and personal. He can pull enemies closer to those units or pull those units closer to enemies and really let them boost their speed to get up closer. None of the other captains really have an ability to do that, so it's actually pretty huge for him. And again, I'll go into some gameplay with all of these so you guys can see it. But that's the 3 captains, and you can feel free to, if you're in the lookout right now for the preview, you can feel free to go in here and pick whatever captain that you want to try out and start looking to test them out. When the game goes live on the 29th, these will be the 3 captains that are in the game, so this video will stay relevant for a long time, and they're always going to be in this game, and there'll be more to be added to it eventually, and when they come out, I'll make sure to cover it then too. Thanks for tuning in, and hopefully see you in the next video.